So another thing I want to cover is strings. Again, a lot of the comments on my Prophet X video were that I was using the Prophet X as a rompler and not really using it to its capabilities, but there's actually, again, a lot of modulation and a lot of synthesis happening. It's just done so subtle that you can't tell. What I like doing for strings is there's two types of samples. There's far samples and near samples, which means, of course, where the mic is placed in relation to the instrument. So you have ones that are recorded closer to the mic, ones that are recorded further away. I like layering on instrument one, I like having a long near sample, and the second instrument, I like having a sample that's further away. So for this example, I have chamber violins long near on the first instrument and chamber vibrato long far on the second. Putting them together, has a really, really nice sound. And again, use these samples as if they're analog oscillators. So what I like to do is detune the first violins, I say +6. So using the fine tune knob. Gives it a little bit more space. And do the opposite, so -6 on the chamber vibrato long far. I think that sounds great. Decrease the attack a little bit. Extend the release to about 62. I'd say the attack 29, release 62 sounds... Yeah, that sounds really nice. And so just by detuning those samples and playing with the amp envelope, you've already given sort of the illusion of a larger orchestra. Because the samples are now starting to phase more naturally with each other, as if they're analog oscillators. That sounds really nice. But let's add some modulation. So when talking about frequency or LFO modulation on a string sample, we're obviously going to talk about vibrato. Now you can put these into audio range modulation territory. Sounds really menacing. Reminds me of Howard Shore's score for Videodrome, in which he recorded a real orchestra string ensemble, and then in some parts he re-synthesized that recording through a synclavier system. So for this one, I'm just having the audio rate modulation affect the second sample, and I'm leaving the violins alone. Really bizarre, really bizarre. Really like it. Now let's go take it out of audio range modulation. So let's bring the amount down. And I found when you bring the amount down, set the shape to random, set the frequency to, I'd say maybe 100, bring the amount up to 35. Sort of has a mellotron effect. Like a really, really beat up mellotron effect. So the modulation is so subtle, you can barely hear it. I mean, you can get it to where you can hear it. Almost sounds like a trill. So when you set to square wave 156 with the amount at 20, it does sort of have like a tense, suspenseful vibrato a little bit. It's just, again, it's just very subtle. Some really bizarre effects using random. Almost has like a I don't even know what you would call that. But yeah, let's get back into some more natural sounding stuff. So 130 with the amount at 6. And a triangle wave. Now let's add some oscillators. I don't think saw. It doesn't really sound natural. Pulse doesn't sound natural. Super saw, no. Sine will give it a little bit of bottom end, so let's just put both the sine, tune them to C1 and C2, fine tune oscillator 2 just a bit, maybe to around 6, and so it's definitely added some bottom end to it. Almost sounds like a cello. So adding the oscillators just slightly, I'd bring them up about halfway, put them to sine, tune them a little bit lower, and then fine tune each of them. Again, just like the instruments, -6 for one, +6 for the other. Definitely adds a lot more bottom end to it, which I think sounds great. Putting a nice hall reverb on there, nothing too crazy. Put the amount to maybe 54, and I actually like putting a chorus effect on it as well. So I put the depth quite a bit. You just want it very subtle. Actually, maybe instead of a hall reverb, let's put a bucket brigade delay. Sync it and put it to 16D. I think that sounds good. Again, it's very subtle. The average person isn't going to notice, but you will. And another thing is that I want to talk about is voice stealing. Now, with voice stealing, I know a lot of people are like, well, I notice. I don't really notice it. I mean, I'm not a fantastic piano player. Again, that's not what this instrument is. It's really more for soundtrack work. For me, I mean, I use a Roland V piano for my primary piano sound. But even if you put it to 16 voices mono, I mean, it also depends on how many notes you're playing, obviously. And personally speaking, when you're playing a string patch, particularly a quartet or any type of ensemble that's only 4 or supposed to be only 4 players, when you hold down 5 notes, automatically it doesn't sound realistic. Like right away, because who's playing the 5th note? If there's 4 players that are playing monophonic instruments, who's playing the 5th note? So the voice stealing on this is actually quite clever. It actually sounds very natural when you're playing an ensemble piece. And of course, you can mask that with delay. So. I mean, you could barely hear it on that patch. But even still, I think it sounds great. Another trick is when you're in 16 voices, so you're in, you're not in stereo anymore, you're in a mono signal. Put it to stack, because you're going to do stack 2 layers. You're going to put edit B layer, and automatically it'll default to a sawtooth wave. That sounds okay, but let's bring the filter down to around 38. So we just want it very subtle. Bring the second oscillator in as a sawtooth, or even a super saw if you want, and fine tune it +6. Decrease the attack. So you have 2 sine waves, 2 saw waves, 2 filters. Want to add a reverb on the saw waves if you want. You have an LFO going on there. You could have an LFO also on this one. I have on this layer I have triangle. The frequency amount of the LFO is 76, and the amount is 26. And this is a super saw. Actually, let's put them both into super saw. But you barely notice. I mean, I'm sure if I turned up the oscillator, or the filter, sorry, yeah, you would notice there. But bring it down. Even halfway. So, contrary to what a lot of people thought, no, I'm not using it as a rompler. There's, like I said, there's 2 super saw waves, there's 2 sine waves, you have 2 LFOs, 3 effects. So, yeah, there's actually quite a bit going on. Actually sounds pretty nice. When you put it to 16 voices mono, I think it sounds better personally. So it's just so subtle that the general listener isn't going to really notice. But it's there. If you want to add a little bit of vibrato with the pitch wheel, you can. So, you got the idea.